All right. I had a whole 100-slide presentation for you that you will not get. Instead, you will get me just speaking through it. A lot of these slides are out there, and I can refer you to links to watch it. And I'll try to speak through the main comments and points. The good news is that the talk you just watched was a very good sequencing, because that is a lot of what I want to speak through. But I want to talk through how to take those ideas of how do you fund small public goods and scale them up to how do you get that to a planetary scale improvement. So I usually use a lot of diagrams and images and so on to help you think through this. So you're just going to have to imagine along with me. Cool. So I want to start by talking about kind of an introduction to my involvement in the Ethereum community. So I've been with the community for a very long time. I started in crypto in 2012, 2013. At the time I was making IPFS, I used to be pretty involved with a lot of the people in the early, what eventually became Ethereum, people like Vitalik and others. I used to hang out with them before Ethereum became a thing. And as Ethereum started, there's a lot of promise in the potential for it to be a great coordination point for a lot of the people that saw the potential in cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and so on, but created a much more programmable environment. And so along the years, a lot of people, I and a lot of people in the IPFS community have been collaborating with the Ethereum community in a lot of stuff. So the networking stack of IPFS became libp2p, which now powers Ethereum 2. I contributed a bit to the Ethereum, the first Ethereum clients that eventually went to, that eventually launched the network. I started Protocol Labs, an organization that does a lot of R&D in the long term. I started the Falcon project, which is a very strong friend and collaborator to the Ethereum network. I've worked on the FVM, which is a lower layer hypervisor where you put EVM on top, and now you can make it WASM compatible, and so on. So I've been kind of in and around the Ethereum community for a long time, close to 10 years now. A lot of the organizations and groups that I participate in and so on have been helping shape a lot of the tech that the Ethereum community ends up using. And so we have like amazing stories of massive collaboration across lots of projects. Now, what I want to, there's a lot of one of the really cool things about the Ethereum community is that it creates a great collaborative space for a lot of other communities to form. And it's a great seeding ground for lots of groups to get started. So as an example, the public goods space recently that you just heard about got its start in and around the Ethereum community. There's a lot of energy that people bring to this group that's extremely, extremely valuable and extremely positive. It's a really optimistic vision of the future. Now, I want to talk a bit about the larger scale problems that we have. Right? So when you think about where you are today in your daily lives, you can sort of look around, and most of your day-to-day tends to be organized in terms of what matters to you short term. It's very difficult to think very long term. It's difficult to think 10 years out. It's difficult to think 30, 40, 50 years out. And the same thing happens when you look back. It's difficult to imagine what life was like 50 years ago or 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. But the thing when you get that broader perspective is that you start looking for the patterns that emerge and what are the kinds of things that are likely to be true in the future. What are the things that are getting better or getting worse? And when you reflect at that scale, you can see that humanity is getting dramatically better over time. Like the story of the last 1,000 years is this amazing story of improvement. Whenever you look around at the human condition and you measure it on all kinds of things, like how many people die every year, how many people suffer from deadly diseases, how many people have access to basic resources, how many people have access to water, shelter, all of these things. For the most part, across the world, life is getting dramatically better. This is a really great news story But unfortunately, good news doesn't travel really far. So it means that news outlets don't tend to report on this kind of stuff because good news doesn't sell advertising dollars, right? Or lira or euros or whatever. So in general, most of the media that you hear day to day is extremely negative and pessimistic because that's what gets people riled up and looking at a lot of stuff. So, but in reality, the world is getting dramatically better decade over decade, century over century, millennia over millennia. And so what I want to talk about is like how that happens and where are we today? And is that going to continue? Or does it have some potential for change? So the process that drives that improvement is our learning about the world and the universe and translating that into concrete knowledge. And so this is the science process, right? You go and discover things around the world. You think about physics or chemistry or biology or math. And using those, you learn and understand what's going on. And through that knowledge, you're able to harness that and put it into, eventually, technologies and products and so on. So you have a very healthy life today because people in the 1700s or 1600s were figuring out that, hey, the water was full of microbes, and some of those are dangerous, and that then you can create other processes that get rid of that kind of problem. And so the scientific and technological advances along the way have just made humanity drastically better and better and better over time. Now, however, today we have unlocked a certain level of power and technology that is extremely, where the power is capable of extreme harm all the way to potentially wiping ourselves out, right? So we have finally gotten to the level of technological capability where we have the ability to wipe out the entire species. We're causing this massive extinction event on the whole world, in all of the other species on the planet. And we're creating this huge climate crisis that might kill hundreds of millions to billions. And at the same time, we're like making AI that might potentially become super powerful. And so this is an extremely critical century. In this century, you, individually, over the next few decades, are going to live some of the most important moments that our species has ever gone through. And how we shape and make that technology, what do we do with things like climate change? What do we do with things like AI? What do we do with things like nuclear? How you shape the tech and how you shape the structures and society around you is going to change the course of history. At the end of the day, the world is highly malleable. You can change the structure of the political landscape around you, how your communities coordinate, how you and what you and your friends and the people you know work on, and those things can dramatically affect the outcome of the world. So, how is all of this related to crypto and so on? The most fundamental improvement that comes out of blockchains is coordination structures. The ability to create a smart contract on a chain that is able to organize lots of people is tremendously powerful. When you think about how crypto got its start, it started with a Bitcoin blockchain with just a very simple incentive structure. Bitcoin deployed an incentive structure that just deployed a little bit of currency for whoever was going to mine it, whoever was going to download a program on the internet, run it, and get a bit of money. In that simple mechanism was embedded a structure that caused hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands, and millions of people to download that software, run it, and get a little bit of money. And now, today, Bitcoin is this massive energy consumer on the planet. And so that's the level of power that you have with things like smart contracts. You can design a small incentive structure, deploy it into the world, and reorganize millions of people. It's an extremely powerful structure. You are playing with like alien technology from the future that is able to rewrite the fabric of reality around you. And so like that's the power of blockchains. Now, we're very early in the development of these things. We're only like 10 years in. The internet didn't start in the 90s. The internet started in the 60s. It took about 30 to 40 years for the full impact of connectivity to reach everyone in the world and for us to figure out how to use it. And so in this early time period with blockchains, the world is still figuring out how to use them and how to build structures on top of it. And so most of the potential and power of what blockchains give you is yet to come. It's coming in the next few years, in the next couple decades, and so on. So what you go and build out over the next year, 2 years, 10 years has the potential of radically reshaping society around you. And so I want you to think through this with a lens of high leverage. Think of the problems that you want to solve, the problems that you care about in the world today, and how might you create incentive structures and mechanisms to reorient a lot of the people around you to go solve them. So there's a kind of broader movement in the crypto community called regenerative crypto econ, or regen for short. I highly recommend you check out the Green Pill community. The Green Pill podcast or book has amazing diagrams. I wanted to show you a bunch of really beautiful diagrams. Highly recommend you check out the book and read through it. It's one of these extremely simple stories that is extremely well laid out, that will open your mind to the potential that you have in front of you. So highly recommend you check that out. Now I want to explain a key concept in all of this. Like many times, lots of groups get into conflict over what feels like limited resources. Who here has heard of the concept positive sum game? I mean, I've heard it multiple times here, but about half the room, great. Normally, in your day-to-day, you tend to think of things as zero sum or negative sum. And that's how most of humanity has thought about the world. And you occasionally hear about positive sum games. But this is a completely broken view. Most of human coordination and most of our interactions tend to be positive sum. Most of what we do day to day tends to be positive sum. Everywhere you look is the building itself, the stage, the technology that you have, the clothes that you're wearing. All of that is a result of a massive positive sum interaction over hundreds of thousands of years. And so in reality, when you build new technology, when you do new science, when you discover how to harness resources around you better, you're creating a massive scale improvement. So it's not like positive sum in the terms of getting 5% or 10% better outcomes. We're talking about 10x better outcomes or 100x better outcomes. So conflict between groups is so damaging, not because you're going to destroy some amount of your resources and so on, but because of the opportunity cost of what you're losing by not coordinating and collaborating to create just massive amounts of creative value for everybody. And so this orientation is described as Paretotopia. Paretotopia is an economic concept based on thinking about Pareto improvements, which is good diagrams you can kind of use to think through them. But the key point there is that if you have as you explore lots of the choices in front of you, if you go towards things that are competitive, you'll end up losing your resources and in general end up losing the opportunity to create a lot more value. And if you instead create coordination structures that enable people to orient and realign themselves to reduce conflict and collaborate, you end up creating an enormous amount of value instead. So as you think about problem spaces that you care about, think about how you can get groups and people and society in general coordinating better to solve certain kinds of problems. And remember that you have the full power of the entire internet and the supercomputers in your pocket to be able to summon thousands or millions of people around the world to come help you solve some problem. So I want to leave you with two examples of this kind of thing. So you heard a little bit about planting trees and so on. I'll give you another example with energy. So there's a structure called a, who here has heard of carbon credits? Yep. Yeah, I'm wrapping up in 30 seconds. About half of you. So who here has heard of renewable energy certificates? Cool, about half of you as well. So today, RECs renewable energy certificates, aren't quite used broadly around the world. They're still stuck as an idea in small communities. And those are getting blocked by creating scalable structures that can get tons of companies around the world using them. So that's an example where you could go and take a project and in a very short span of time, like 2-4 years, radically change the direction of the planet. If you can scale RECs to be used globally, you could literally very quickly change the profile of carbonization on the planet. That could be like a massive level of impact. And that's just waiting for like some software that you can write, a website, a smart contract, and then creating a project that can scale it and get adoption. The other example I'll leave you with is accelerating scientific progress itself. The public goods funding structures that we were talking about, you can use those to coordinate scientists and technologists building this kind of stuff. Most of the technology development tends to be either investments through corporations or grant funding in science. And there's this gap in the middle between science and technology where it's very difficult to get funding to carry on your research and turn it into a product someday. And all of the investors in companies, this feels too risky. So we need some other incentive structure in the middle that can help people get funding for things that need to get translated. And that's where you can use some of the public goods mechanisms to create an incentive field, some kind of new incentive field to reward all of the people for the work there. So I'll leave you with those two ideas, and thank you very much. Take care.
A big thank you to